of applause. I want to hear you guys clap. Oh, you guys can come on out.
Come on out.
Have your seat.
Storming the stage.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a comedian, Joe Leonardo. I know a little bit about technology. I have like a phone, and I have an old AOL email
And you are
account.
on stage.
And I'm on stage here at the Next Web.
Yeah.
But it would be weird if I was just by myself because I'm not an expert at all. So we have David Ryan Polgar, our tech expert in tech.
There we go. Well, thank you. But the point of this show at Funniest Tech, we're a New York City-based podcast and live panel show, and what we do is we tackle some of the thorniest issues in technology, but we do it inside of a comedy theater because we're thinking, what better way to get at the honest truth about how tech makes us feel? Because when we think about tech, it's not either positive or negative, right? We feel anxious, we feel awe, excited, nervous, right? Those are complicated ways that we need to really explore in a messy fashion. We've talked about issues like cryptocurrency, diversity in tech, tech addiction, but today we're going to be talking about, which hopefully a lot of you are thinking about, how do we stay creative in the digital age? Right? I mean, think about how many of you right now are holding your smartphone, right?
Or looking at that instead of looking at us.
Well, there you go. Well, you got to decide.
One guy pointed to himself in the back. It's like me. I'm not a fan.
Well, the idea, right, is we touch our smartphone more than we touch our significant other, right? It's something that has rings, pings, and dings that keeps us kind of attached. But again, if you're part of a company, a lot of founders here are part of companies, you're thinking about innovation. We want to talk about on stage with Susan and Pamela, that we'll introduce soon, about how we stay creative. How do we get that aha moment? How do we reach a point where we say, that's a good idea, right? Because again, when you think about when you're creative, it's usually not when you're overly distracted.
Yes, and all that seriousness out of the way, this is a comedy show. We're going to be talking lighthearted, we're adding some levity to it, so I want to hear you all laugh right now, just one big laugh.
There it goes.
You're allowed to do that during the show. Anytime you want to laugh at anything, laugh. Anytime you want to cheer, stop your feet. Think of this as Gallagher minus the watermelons.
There we go.
Is Gallagher international?
I guess not. I guess not. But so who do we have, Joe, with us today?
Well, let me introduce our guests. Big round of applause. I feel like I'm on a morning show on the radio. We have Susan Lindner, the CEO and founder of Emerging Media, with us.
Hi.
And we have Pamela Pavashak, the founder at Change Sciences.
I love this sound effect. I mean, I feel like I get points every time.
Like a shock jock.
I feel like we're getting graded. By the end of the show, it's going to say we had like 350 points. But let's start us off, since we only have about 17 minutes here, right? So, Susan, we'll start off with you.
Yeah.
Right? How do you stay creative when you're constantly carrying around your smartphone? It's constantly saying, look at me, feed me, right? How do we, and how do you specifically, how do you actually say, I need to come up with a creative thought, right? I've got a client and they need this new idea. So do you have any kind of tips or tricks or something that you do to stay creative?
Beyond porn.
Sure. Well, you know, whatever works.
So
it makes you creative? I guess so, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well,
I've learned a lot by watching porn. I've learned a lot what not to do, apparently.
And we are in Amsterdam, I will say, although I came here for the canals and the museum.
I came here for something else.
So yeah, how do you stay creative besides your pornography addiction?
So I think staying connected actually has helped me become more creative.
Okay, let's unpack that. What do you think?
So sometimes just going down that rabbit hole of clicking and finding what the next thing is, I'm turned on to things, I'm finding new things that I never thought of before.
Freudian slip you had.
Last night, for example, a little bit jet lagged, a little bit excited about being here today, I wound up finding an article about how scientists now believe that octopuses may be aliens from another planet. The entire group,
really?
Octopuses, squids, cephalopods, you name it. That has gotten me thinking.
What's that based on?
That is based on bacteria that has never been before found on Earth and how it colonized quickly.
That's funny, because I read something that like if humans were to disappear, octopi would be the next to evolve intelligence.
Yes.
They're the next in line. after humanoids and primates.
Joe, I'd be interested though of what everybody here, right, thinks about that. So who here?
I read that under a Snapple cap.
So they're very informative. But who here kind of agrees with Susan that they think kind of going down this rabbit hole of tech where you see an article, like you get a ping on your phone, hey, read this. Who thinks that it makes them more creative? Feel free to like raise your hand. Do you think that makes you more creative? Raise your hand.
There you go. Or clap. That's noise.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
All right, clap if you think you're struggling with your phone, and sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and you're saying, why am I still looking at my phone? I haven't fed my kids. My wife thinks I ignore her.
Yeah, big clap over here. I'm the same way. I feel like it's a big distraction for me.
Okay.
I already have like the ADHD. That's why I do comedy. But last night I had trouble sleeping because I was completely jet lagged, and my phone kept buzzing because it was on New York time. I had a bunch of comedians and friends just messaging me the stupid shit that they message me. But it's happening at 3 or 4 in the morning for me, and every time it buzzes, I would wake up, look at my phone, see what it has to say, and it's just emoji of a grapefruit or whatever, and I turn it off.
That's why they always recommend not using your smartphone as your alarm clock, right? So here you are.
Which I do.
You're the example then, I guess, of what not to do for tech. But
I am all the failures of tech in one person.
You keep a failure journal, which I heard now is a thing with some Dutch guys we were talking to. So Pamela, what about you? You're obviously in a field where you're thinking about emotional AI, like really cutting edge emerging tech ideas. You obviously need to have critical thinking, creativity. So how do you stay creative in the digital age?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an aspect to technology that can be creative, that idea of the mashup and synthesizing. What's missing online is constraints. So when I'm doing like a design thinking kind of workshop, there's constraints to how we create. And that's kind of missing sometimes in our online experience. Like there is no constraint. In fact, we're encouraged to keep going and keep going. And so that's kind of missing.
The Beatles actually, that's a big Beatles thing, was they only had a 4-track. So all of Sgt. Pepper's, are you guys Beatles fans? Does anybody know about the Beatles? Clap if you do love the Beatles. All right, they went platinum multiple times, so a bunch of you I know do. But they only had a 4-track to record Sgt. Pepper's. If you listen to that album, it's very complicated. All that is done by a lot of mixing down onto 4 separate tracks. The more they were constrained, the more creative they got. Later album like Abbey Road, Let It Be, was done on an 8-track, 16-track. They had freedom to do whatever they wanted, but as we know, great albums, but they're a little more simpler.
Sure.
They're easier to use. It kind of turned off that creative part of the brain through, like you're saying, through constraint.
Well, let's kind of dig into that idea of constraint. So Pamela, are there any ways that you've kind of taken a more analog approach? Like for a lot of people, they might say, you know what, I'm distracted by my smartphone, therefore I'm going to go to this old-fashioned alarm clock, or I'm going to use pen and paper. Do you still use pen and paper?
Well, yeah, I think in the design community we're pretty bad about Sharpies and Post-its. We have serious addiction to those. But what I've found, so I have 3 kids, and I have an enormous amount of crap, like leftover toys that were abandoned or broken or random stuff. I use that now in like speculative design workshops and in my own work to prototype things. So taking, the head of a Barbie doll and, well, that sounds kind of creepy, but like you could take that physical objects because they're very evocative, right? When you are interacting with something that's in the physical world, it's much easier to evoke that memory, that sensation. You have more senses going. Our online experience is pretty sensory poor right now, whereas a physical experience, there might be a scent, a taste, a touch to it that elicits a memory. I mean, that's all of Proust right there in a nutshell, actually. So,
is that like how we learn? Like, do we need to excite our other senses? Because with our phones, it's just eyes and typing with our thumbs.
I mean, that's going to get better, right? Because things are moving. We're really obsessed with the screen right now, but hopefully, things are going to start moving off the screen. Although a lot of our creativity is like, hey, what if we could just slap a screen on this thing or this thing? But once we resist that impulse...
I can order Seamless off my refrigerator, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Just open the freaking refrigerator, Joe.
Cook something.
But yeah, I do think that, that element of sensory richness could come back to technology once we move off of screens, because right now it's all visual And that's a lot of our problems with our relationships on screens too, is we've got a screen in between, so we disassociate from each other and from ourselves even.
What tech do you think will revolutionize that, or what tech do you think is leading that charge?
I don't think there's just one. I kind of don't think it's going to be VR, because VR tends to cut you off in your own world, although there's some interesting experiments. There's a food company, the name is escaping me right now, and they do like a VR 3D printed food, virtual food experience, so you can taste things from history. You can taste things that you never would taste before, and it's a full-on sensory experience combining virtual reality and wearables, I think, and 3D printed objects. And so I think that's a possibility, but I do think it's probably going to be manifest itself again in physical objects that will then have a sensor or something in them.
I want edibles more so than wearables, like having
Just
some
be
kind
careful,
of.
Susan.
That's where they
That's a whole other
batteries.
world.
Well, that was the promise, right, with 3D printers. We'd be creating this 3D printed food. But Susan, I'm also interested, though, in this idea of burnout, right? So I see a lot of you, right? A lot of you today are on your phones. There's a lot of overwhelming kind of activities going on. So how many of you feel overwhelmed right now by just the amount of activities that you have going on, the amount of social networks that you're on? Kind of raise your hand if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed. All right, so we have a lot of people, right? So I think the big part is, like, I know for me personally, when I feel overwhelmed, I like to kind of go for a long walk, clear my brain, actually put away, not have my phone even in my pocket, because I think if we're tempted by it, that's something we're always going to touch.
So hard for me to do. I have a small dog, and I have to walk him 3 times a day because I live in an apartment in New York City. I have to have my phone on me. I feel if I forget my phone, even
naked?
that short 20-minute walk, if I don't have my phone on me, I feel so disconnected for some reason from the outside world. And I know it's just like it's a tech addiction, just like any other type of addiction.
Well, it's nomophobia, right? The fear of not having your phone or not having Wi-Fi signal. Just this idea that we actually.
What's it called?
Nomophobia.
I thought that's when you love a phone and you hate people.
Well, it is that. It is that kind of addiction, and now obviously tech addiction becoming a hot topic. But Susan, when you feel overwhelmed by tech and you're just feeling kind of like overplugged, right?
Yep.
What do? Are you a person who does like digital detox or digital diet or have some type of activity that kind of recenters?
After the drinking?
After the drink? Well,
After the drinking. So then.
Maybe it's tech-free drinking. Like you don't have your phone at the
That's
bar.
right.
So maybe like
Don't
hanging
drink
out
and text. I think we all know where that goes.
hanging out with friends, having a beer. I mean, that's always a good activity.
I love nature.
Yep.
I love to travel, and I love to eat crazy things.
And you were saying kind of off stage that you did have an experience, right, with some crazy food. So do tell this experience, like traveling, I guess, to Amsterdam, right? You had some
to Stockholm.
offshoot? Okay.
Yeah, I had a 7-hour layover in Stockholm, so I made a decision to leave the airport, and I figured I really just have time for a great meal. So I thought, what does Stockholm have to offer? And I saw this fantastic menu board that said, your choice, 3 kinds of herring, a moose burger, or reindeer steaks. So I thought, this is my only opportunity to eat Blitzen, Vixen, and then one of the other Santa's reindeers. I'm going for it. So that was just
you
fantastic.
ruined everybody's childhood by eating.
I only got coal when I was a kid. This
Santa's
is my
gonna be
revenge. Eating one of Santa's reindeer.
Yeah, I love challenging myself with things I never would have tried before. So new experiences for me are the way I tap out of tech and try something new.
But I will say this, coming to Amsterdam, using Google Maps was a lifesaver. Being able to just look at my phone, getting here is because of Google Maps for me. You know, I had the technology to find my way
Explore.
here. So there is like the plus side and the minus side. I can't,
Well, I think that's.
can't look at a map.
I think that's the key
normal old
part
map.
because for example, like the airlines, they lost my luggage, right? So I had to go out yesterday and
David
find
bought this full suit yesterday,
This
by
is
the way.
solely for your benefit, courtesy of H&M, and really, I was just walking around, and I didn't even have any signal on my phone, and I was getting lost. But like at the same time, you can feel those synapses going off. You're saying, "My God, where am I?" You know, it's a beautiful city. You're walking around. There's canals everywhere. Friendly people. Almost getting hit with bicycles all the time.
Yeah.
But it was great because you had to pay attention, and you realize that so many times in life we're kind of on autopilot. So Pamela, that's what I kind of want to dig in, right? It's like. Do you ever feel like you're on autopilot? And if so, like what do you do to kind of push yourself out of that? Because I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Like so many times in life, you're just kind of walking through, and then all of a sudden you get into a different location. You wind up in an unusual territory, and you're saying, wow, this is different. I have to pay attention. I can't just look at my phone. I actually have to talk to random people.
Yeah, I mean, what I like to do is impersonate Alexa.
Impersonate Alexa.
Hello. Pretty good, right?
That's
all I got. That's all I got.
That's all my Alexa. She can't even understand a word I'm saying.
No, I do think
Also,
there's something
I have a cousin
to that.
named Alexis, so she goes off every time I talk about my cousin or I call her on the phone. Alexa's always listening. I see a little blue light turn and look at me.
I wonder.
Well, that
Amazon's
name
writing all
has
this
gone
down.
down in popularity significantly in the U.S. because of Alexa.
Right. Because you can never date a girl named Alexa because every time you said her name, Amazon would be listening to your conversation. Or,
we
anything
don't have
else
much of a
going on or
guarantee
anything
that
else.
they're not in general.
Right.
They'll know I'm just sitting at home watching like the
So
property.
Amazon
we
would
might
say,
find
you
that
have a
out."
very boring relationship, you know, and then sell me self-help books.
She puts herself on snooze.
Right,
It's so
right.
boring.
So you're autopilot. How do you get out of that?
Yeah, I think the same way a lot of people do. It's, what's most evocative? It's stories, songs, scents. Those are all connected to our memory. So anything that you can do to sort of stimulate new experiences. And so I think travel is a great one. I think, honestly, having kids really stretches you in new ways and challenges you to do things that you wouldn't normally try or do. Plus, you can relive all of your childhood. So for instance, I went roller skating at a roller rink last week because it was a birthday party and that's what we did. And I'm like, well, I'm the only parent going, but who cares? I'm going to do it anyway. And, so it's those kind of new experiences. I fell a few times. It was still fun.
That's like a one-way ticket to the emergency room for me.
I used to be pretty good, so, it just kicked right in.
Susan,
Yeah, I want to have those moments where I put down my phone, maybe use a pad paper, because doing stand-up, I write all my jokes on my phone. Sometimes if I'm workshopping new material, I'll have my phone out and I'll have a key phrase that jots my memory for something. But I've responded to a text while working, while in the middle of a stand-up act. I was looking at my phone, something popped up, and I literally split my brain, was doing my act, the audience was loving it, and during their laughs, I was responding, no, it was okay, audience. I responded to a text. It was like my mother was trying to.
Well, that's where they wonder if it's like a Pavlovian kind of impulse to respond. But as a lot of you probably saw, right, with the recent Google kind of update, Google Duplex, that took up a lot of the dialogue. But Google announced that they are going to have a focus on well-being. So with the Android, they're going to have a new tool where you flip over your phone, you have a do not disturb kind of moment.
I love that idea.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea.
Okay, I'm a critic of that one. Just jump in. And I haven't heard anyone really say it out loud, but I don't think that it's a really great thing to turn on and off your phone, whether you set it up or not, or get a notification or not, because it totally abdicates responsibility for improving the technology itself. It says, okay, it's kind of a neoliberal, actually, point of view on technology. It's like, okay, you guys manage it. We'll give you the tool, and you can use it to turn it off and on, but we're not going to change anything about the technology itself. We're not going to change maybe the addictive ways it might be designed. We're not going to change how we collect data. We're not going to change any of that stuff. Or I didn't hear that. It just gave me an on-off switch. And so that's going to work about as well as a digital detox works, which is not very well.
It's an interesting perspective because I think of cigarettes, and then there's the nicotine patch. It's kind of like a nicotine patch for your phone, right? It is necessarily, it's on you to quit smoking, right? But you can use the patch as a tool. So I see the benefits of them having this feature to help you to have it be do not disturb, as opposed to you know what, if you have a problem, it's your issue. It's like putting filters on cigarettes.
The smoking analogy doesn't work very well because we could live better without smoking at all.
Yeah,
right?
But it's so enjoyable.
But technology, we can't really. There's no way. If we just removed all technology, We're not going to be able to work, we're not going to be able to parent. A lot of the emotional labor that people do, like keeping track of addresses and cards and greetings and scheduling meetings and events, all that happens through technology. We can't really get off of it in the same way that we would for cigarettes.
As a former smoker, though, for a very long time, and I quit because like I had to, and because I'm like dying from it. No, I'm not.
Because it's killing you.
Because it's bad for you. But having smoke breaks was a way to network, talk to people. So there is a smoking culture, especially as a comedian. Everybody goes outside and has a cigarette. You talk to your other fellow comedians, you get booked on their shows.
So cancer is a comedian trade-off, I guess.
Well, just like, kind of.
Yeah, it might be.
With tragedy comes comedy.
So Joe, we are kind of nearing the end. I just want to hear just from our two panelists, like what is your moment, just 5 seconds, what is your area, what is your moment of Zen? Where do you go to have that flow? I didn't mean to rhyme there.
Yeah.
I'm Dr.
Yeah, you
Seuss.
did.
Where do you go to have
Where do you go to have your flow?
You wouldn't
We
know.
have a kid's book, Funniest Tech, coming in the fall.
I really do tend to spend time with my pets. Or my kids.
Good.
If I'm going to go off, fine.
Susan.
Glass of Sauvignon Blanc, hot tub, 11 o'clock at night.
Watching your porn, and then you're good. So we've got Joe Leonardo.
Hey, and there's David Ryan Polgar.
And we're Funniest Tech. Thank you, Pamela, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.